You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. The Five Rings Podcast, 2016 Rio Summer Olympics edition on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Only 3 more shows to go, Kevin.
Only 3 more live daily Five Rings. Day 14 today, Duane. Can you believe it? It's been 2 weeks. Been doing those already. It's just crazy.
They go fast because there's a lot going on, and I'm trying to enjoy the last week, and I'm trying to we were saying in our earlier show today too, it'd be nice to get back to a bit of a pattern, and we were talking before show how we'll handle the Paralympics too. We can't give them daily coverage. We just simply can't for our own lives, but we certainly will give them a lot more competition, and there's a lot going on, and that's how I always come to grips with this, because this ends, and it's a great event. It's my favorite event on the calendar, but I know that there's so much good. There's less than a year away from the World Championships in athletics with Usain Bolt's probably swan song. That's an amazing thing to look forward to next year. The Asian Winter Games are happening this winter. I'm going to try my damnedest to give coverage of that because it's something that intrigues me. And ultimately, we're less than 600 days from another Winter Olympics, so lots ahead. But one more weekend of the Summer Games too, and a lot going on too today. I don't know if you have him in the medals or not, but I did want to off the top give him a mention too, because he's a friend of the show and he's been on the show a couple times already. Evan Dunphy.
My medals were made before the show. They were made last night. So, Evan Dunphy is a special mention we have to mention. 4th, Duane, in this competition of the 50-kilometer race walk. He was the best Canadian in the 20-kilometer, and on this day was the best Canadian, yes, and led the race for like almost majority of the race, I would even say, until the Australian talent decided to attack and even got caught by the Slovakian. Evan was staggering to the line, got it just in time. When he crossed the line, he collapsed, was wheeled off the track. But what a performance for him, his best ever performance, and 4th at his first Olympics.
Yeah, look, and like I said, you just said, 4th, and it was certainly dehydrated at the end. A lot of effort put into that.
It was warm today, Duane, in Rio. It was warm. It was sunny, and for 50-kilometer in almost 3 hours and a half of racing, it's a lot of walking.
Yeah, exactly. 50 kilometers. It's the longest race in the Olympics. And, we'll hopefully be able to touch base with Evan on some level in the days ahead to maybe have another conversation with him in a week or so from now. If not, certainly on Twitter, we'll be able to touch base. I'm sure he'll be fine. 25 years old. The sky is the limit for him, because this is a discipline that typically is dominated by people in their mid to late 30s. So Evan's still probably got 3, maybe even 4 more Olympics in him if he's so inclined to do that. Obviously, we like him because not only is he a great Canadian athlete that's successful, but also he's a whistleblower, almost an investigative journalist in many ways about clean sport and about fair sport. And good for him this morning. As good a goal to me. I'm not gonna. 4th place is unfortunate that you don't get a piece of hardware for it, but it's an honorable finish that deserves a lot of attention and credit. And unfortunately here, because there's so much going on, and if you don't know the story behind it, it's just going to be one of those brief mentions, and you're going to say, oh, he finished 4th and move on. But no, I'm going to give him a little more time, and I just have, Kevin.
Oh, no, just 50 kilometers, the distance, it's mind-boggling. The race, the conditions today, the weather, many of the riders collapsed. Well, when I say collapse, didn't lose consciousness and just fall and just die. No, what happened, they were dehydrated, like the Frenchman who was leading the race before Evan took over, and he literally just was on the side of the road resting for a little bit, then started to walk again, and then just couldn't, and just laid flat and had ice dumped onto them. Literally, they had stations with sponge with water and stations with ice. So riders would just pass by the side, take some ice, put them in their trunks, and continue. The conditions were that hot today. And again, I'm just mind blown by Evan's performance. I was losing it. I was yelling, screaming when I was barely woken up. When I saw your text message when I was getting woken up this morning, I'm like, what? He's winning? I need to tune in right now and lose. It's just, that's what the Olympics are all about, right? 4th, it's a victory for clean sport. It's a great story. It's what it's all about.
Fair enough. All right. Let's get into our medals today, Kevin. And you've gave me a tip on what your wood medal is going to be, and this is a topic that I knew that we'd have to talk about, but I've been trying to figure out how to talk about it for a while. So we're gonna jump right in, and you can give your wood medal from there, and then we'll have a conversation with it. With the caveat before we do this, that what Kevin and I don't want to speak for Kevin. What I want to speak for is I just want sport to be fair. And
Yeah,
I don't want to exclude anyone, and I'm not trying to make anyone not be who they are. So that's not at all what the spirit of the conversation we're about to have is.
and
We just have to have this conversation because it is a
and
major topic.
and to add on my side of things, uh, what is not always what it seems, and because of history of African sport as a whole, with fake identity, fake age, with age that's been trafficked, and those type of events that happen in the past, makes for more scrutiny to be, in a way, needed for those type of situation. And my wood medal goes to hyperandrogenism in, weirdly, in only one event that's really an issue in the world of sport: 800 meters on the women's side, track and field. For some reason, that event particularly has the most amount of percentage case of hyperandrogenism than any other, and it comes from African country, and it comes from Margaret Wambui, Francine Nyonsaba, and Castor Semaniana. And when you hear Castor Semaniana, you heard about her before. She was the one that started that whole debate and controversy a few years ago when she was banned because she does have an hyperandrogenism illness, you would say, or a condition is probably the better word, where her body secretes way too much testosterone to a level of a male athlete's. And there was a ruling by the Tribunal Arbitral du Sport from Lausanne a few years ago that she needed to take medication if she wanted to compete on the women's side to make it fair for the other athletes. That decision has been rendered obsolete last year by the rights tribunal. So right now it's in limbo. It's still not sure what's going to happen to this. My why the reason why I put in my wood medal, Duane, is not for those three athletes, but it's for the rest of the other athletes. It's any other reason for use or use of not when you have testosterone level to a certain level threshold, or what considered a positive or negative in many of the sports, according to WADA and USADA. It's not if you have it or not, it's thresholds in this case. And this is the only example in the entire world of sports that I am aware of. That's the caveat. I gladly say it, but I have seen things, example, in mixed martial arts, where for some period of time they had such a thing as testosterone replacement therapy for older athlete that depleted testosterone because they were older. They were allowed to take testosterone to make it an even playing field, but it's not necessarily even because, well, if you're older, it's normal that your body doesn't generate as much testosterone, and maybe you shouldn't be fighting. So why would they allow you to get that advantage compared to the age? So there's that precedent in that world of mixed martial art. And this world has become really convoluted because you have the sex aspect to it, and it's hard to prove it's a male or a female. There was a controversy: is it really this hyperandrogenism condition, or is it somebody that lied 20 years ago and we've seen the ramification of this? So this is where it's hard to prove, is to see who's right, who's wrong, what's morally correct, what's politically correct or not, and what's fair for the other athletes. So my wood medal encompasses all that situation, and I just say it's a shame for the other five athletes in that final, because those three are probably going to win all the medals.
There's a disconnect between the sporting press and the more issues oriented, especially left of center press when it comes to this issue, because I think those of us that look at things from a sporting perspective are very cynical about motivations, and we sometimes ascribe motivations to people that aren't there, and we don't know. You should never put motivation onto someone unless you have evidence, that are the clear evidence, like something that they've said or done in some way that you can point to and say that's clearly evidence of the motivation. We don't know, but our cynicism comes through in this way, Kevin, is that we assume because there's this advantage out there that they must be doing it, they must be manipulating it for their own gain so that they can have the glory of winning, as opposed to just being a natural occurrence. And that's where this gets really complicated when you start thinking about it.
Exactly. To be quite honest, because we have seen that situation arise, and since human has been human, so forever, and there's been sports, there's been people that are trying to cheat And I'm not accusing any of those three as cheating, but the idea that somebody could cheat that way is the reticence in that aspect of is it fair, as in it's not fair. And that's why it's so complicated. It's not as easy to say men or women in nowadays. And what's complicated on the athlete side is, well, this hyperandrogenism condition, it technically should have always existed if it's something naturally occurring. So why is it just an issue now? That's my red flag for me.
Yeah. Look, this is, it comes down to, there's not enough research on this. I'll give I'll give a co-wood medal here in terms of, I have my own, but I'll slightly change your wood medal and make it my own by saying I'm going to give a wood medal to the lack of research on this. Because if the Olympics is going to have categories in terms of men's and women, and that they're there to allow fair competition within both, then they need to define that scientifically, what that means. And that's a complicated thing to do. And it's a complicated thing to do that goes that should be physiological purely, is what I'm getting at. That forget gender identity and all that politics stuff that's out there right now. I am a left of center guy. So gender identity questions are, to me, I fall way on the left of many people that are probably listening to this. You know, if you feel that you're a woman, you're a woman. That's how I feel in terms of general day-to-day life. But when it comes to sport, we have to define what these subcategories mean if we want to have fair competition, because the world of sport is too damn cynical, and someone will cheat if they don't define it somehow. And that's what they need to do. And they need to do that through research that can point to precise physical identifiers that can be used. That
shouldn't be hard, right? X or Y chromosome. That's where you're. But to use the analogy of combat sport, because it explains the point why it should be fair or not. In athletics, like, they run faster than anybody else, fine. But when it happens, when this situation is going to arise in combat sport, and we're talking about the other athletes getting a severe concussion because of the difference and the difference in skills, ability, and strength. It's more strength, I agree. And that's where you have this disconnect that it's not fair for the other athletes. And that point can be extrapolated to other sports. It's not as, the consequences are not as heavy in athletics. They're just faster. But if you take that situation and put it in other sports, we're talking about an unfairness that can become danger to athlete safety. So that situation just needs to be, like you mentioned, research, define more. And that's why it for me, like you mentioned, I'm a left centrist, if not more even left on a lot of issues. And it has nothing to do with gender identity here. It has to do with, we hope it's not people taking advantage of a loophole. And we hope that they're not creating a precedent that can change the fairness of sports. And it's not just the Olympics here. So it's not to create that precedent. So my wood medal is that situation. And it's weird because you don't hear about it anywhere else. It's the 800 meters and it's the Olympics.
Yeah. Look, the other side of it real quick is that what people will say is that there are genetic markers in all sports, across sports, male sports, whatever, that have provided athletes with advantages for years. And one only has to look at some of the history of these athletes. You hear all the time, their brother's a professional hockey player and they happen to be winning a lot of swimming medals. Their father was an Olympian. Their mother and their father were Olympian. You hear this all the time. That's genetics, right? That's a genetic advantage that these people have over you or me, Kevin. Like the old adage of it all, it'll just take hard work and effort. That's a load of crap. It takes hard work, effort, and great genetics to be an Olympian, because not everyone can do it. So that's the argument, that there's a lot of advantages out there that aren't called out in the same way, and that ultimately ties this back into what society defines a female as. That's the other side of this argument. I also would suggest that this isn't if they're creating this loophole, then that's a different thing. But if they find out after the fact that maybe there's something genetically that they can point to that means that these women should be running in a different class, then that's one thing moving forward. But that shouldn't take away from what they do right now, because there's lots of examples in the Olympics of people that have taken advantage of loopholes. I'll give you the concrete one that everyone remembers that's not serious. It's Diaki Suzuki, who won the backstroke back in 1988, because he was the first to discover that the dolphin kick was really, really quick if you did it underwater the whole way. And they changed the rules after the fact, but he still has his gold medal and no one questions that.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. But that situation for me, we're talking about it because we have to touch that issue. And it's an issue that is not necessarily brushed over, but it has to be investigated more.
All right. So yeah, that's that, and we'll watch that 800 meter tonight. And it is a great race. The 800 is one of the best races in terms of it's like that perfect balance of strategy and power. So it's a lot of fun to watch, and that will go off tonight on the women's side. And, there's the Canadian content in that, and I'm going to touch on her in a little bit. So let's go on to my wood medal. My wood medal is the fact that the U.S. 4x100 meter relay team got a rerun at the expense of the Chinese. To me, the question people were saying out loud, they weren't even bouncing away from it. They were outright asking whether if it wasn't the Americans, this would have happened, whether the influence and the power of the American track and field lobby was what allowed these women to push the Chinese out of a spot that they had earned. Now, there was a infraction by the Brazilians, which they deemed was interfered on the Americans' ability to pass the baton. Okay. I'll take their word for it. I thought that infraction was not quite as bad as it was made to look on the track, but that's my own opinion. That's subjective. I just think that there's probably some truth to the idea that if it was a less successful historical and less powerful historical and less money being paid by their broadcast partner country that would have been in that situation, that it was unlikely that they would have got the rerun. And beside that, and I think that this will have to be what happens moving forward, is that there probably needs to be 9 lanes. There needs to be an extra lane to allow for these circumstances to be dealt with on Olympic tracks moving forward, which is unfortunate because we talk all the time on this show about how we need to get the prices down, the cost down of hosting these games, and adding a lane, although in the grand scheme of an Olympic budget probably isn't much, it's still more money. So alas, that's my my bronze medal. Is that?
Yeah, but Duane, the adding a lane or not doesn't necessarily change the fact that when you look at the replay, though, there is impediment when there's actually a pretty severe contact from the left elbow of the Brazilian runner to the I think it was Fisher. I think it was one of the 4 American women. Yes, it was maybe embellished, and but there was contact as well. There was some base and foundation here for argument, and in the rules of track and field, if there is impediment on the passing of the baton, a rerun can be allowed, and it's up to the officials, and the officials allowed it.
Yeah, it's just rare, and there is questions to be had there. It's an unfortunate situation, and had there been 9 lanes on the track, even though
there is 9 lanes theoretically, but the first lane, because of the band, that is way too narrow.
There's not 9 all the way around. It's only on the straight.
Yeah.
The 9th
lane.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why they could normally. In the past, they have added lanes to an Olympic final. There usually is a slush lane that's there to allow for that, but that wasn't the case here. So that's just an unfortunate situation. And whether or not, like I have cynical suspicions about it, but putting that aside, it's just unfortunate the Chinese got pushed out, even because they would have had that moment where we qualified, and they would have been preparing for it, and the rug would have been pulled out, and it was damn close to being Canada. We would have been hearing a lot more of that here. Canadians.
It was 1,000th of a second. That was the time with the Chinese. Canada was a 1,000th of a second faster, so it was really close to be Canada.
Yeah, so there you go. All right, let's move on and get into something positive, because we talked a lot now that I want to talk positive stuff.
My bronze medal is Charles Philibert Thibouteau in the middle distance, 1,500 meter on the track. He finished just outside of the final. Didn't qualify for the final. He's Canadian. Nate Brennan, which is 3rd Olympics, he qualified for the final. He was on the cusp, but because of his time, he qualified. But Charles Philibert Thibouteau, in his interview after with Scott Oak on CBC, he mentioned the names of Nate Brennan and the other predecessors, and now he found his vacation. He said, I found my distance. I found my vacation. I now want to be one of the best of all time in Canada. I don't want just to become my personal best. I want to hang and be with the best ever with those guys here. I know I can do it. I've seen it here on the track, and I will work my hardest to do it all the time. And he is going to become one of the best ever. He's still young in that discipline. We talked about how long distance running, especially middle distance like this, it's 1,500 meter on the track, you get in your prime in your early 30s, if not mid 30s, with experience and endurance that it's built up over the years. So I look forward to Charles Philibert Thibouteau getting medals eventually, world championships, and who knows, maybe even gold in Tokyo, with the attitude and the charisma that it was just a great moment for Canadian track and field.
He name dropped like a lot. Kevin Sullivan, he name dropped.
Yes, all of them. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but he name dropped all of them.
Yeah, so obviously he's a guy that studied his history in the middle distances. And Canada actually has a sneaky good history in the middle distances. Not a lot of golds because it's a discipline that's dominated by the Central and Eastern Africans, but they have actually snuck a few bronze and silvers along the way, which if you look at it in a North American context, in a regional context, they've done quite well with. So that's a nice, sneaky little good history there. Speaking of sneaky good history, they just done my background here. The Canadian 4x1 winning relay team was on there, and those uniforms from 1996. Man, wow! Did we ever think they looked good? Like, what were they thinking?
Yeah. Well, all right.
Anyway, let's go to my bronze medal, and I'm going to go with a gold medal by Canada. I was I don't think I've talked about it on this show very much, but I wrestled throughout my high school life. I was a high school wrestler. I was finished like sixth in the province once, so that was maybe the sport that I was most successful at. Sixth in the province is a long way from making the Olympics, though. Long way. So I always appreciate watching the freestyle wrestling when it happens, and
That's
when
rough.
I was.
Wow, I watched that match, and wow, it's a tough woman right there.
Oh, no, it's one of the most demanding sport I've ever played in. And the other part of this too, quickly before I go there, when I wrestled, and I'm not, I make fun of my age all the time, but I'm hardly 80, so it's not that long ago. There was no women divisions. There was no female divisions at all. There was a girl that I remember wrestling against, and I wrestled her a couple times in high school. And she was the only one, and she had to wrestle against the boys because that was the only way she could wrestle. There was no opportunity for her. And that, again, we're talking 25 years ago, right? Not 50, not 70. Yeah. This is within relative
lifetime.
Yeah, relative lifetime, that females didn't even have options, and now they have full Olympic disciplines, and they have a competitive field and all that sort of great stuff. So it's great there. So Erica Wiebe is the woman's name. She was Canada's gold medalist, fourth of the games. Nice story there. She dominated in that final match too. Like, and as someone who knows the sport a bit, it's like 2 minutes into that, it's like, oh yeah, she's got this. She's by far the better wrestler here, better technical, better physical. She was just in better shape, and it was a nice story. And she was weeping on the podium, and the whole 9 yards. And seems like a really sincere individual. So all those great stuff that you love about Olympians, and a bit unexpected. She was considered a contender for a medal. I'm not sure many people thought she was going to win the gold, but certainly at the start of the day, with everything else going on and the 200-meter final going on, then a bit overlooked until all of a sudden, whoa, we're fighting for gold. And that's always the fun thing about the Olympics, is when that whoa, we're fighting for gold, whoa, we won the gold happens.
And she almost pinned her too. She almost finished the match before it was over. When in the first period, she had her close to the edge, and she got her in a wizard armbar, and if it was close to one shoulder was down, she was rolling the other one. The Kazakh wrestler did not expect that type of speed and strength on the mat from the Erica Wiebe. Wiebe, actually.
Yeah, we say Wiebe because we run in MLS circles, and there's a high profile journalist named Wiebe that spells his name the same way. So that would be why we were calling her Wiebe rather than Wiebe, but no, she pronounces it Wiebe. At any rate, he's great. And as I said,
I have to say it, Duane. Have you seen Fistful of Quarters, the documentary about the Donkey Kong world record? But Wiebe and Wiebe is a great controversy in that movie. So go see it. It's just a great movie.
I have not seen that. I'd like docs. So after the games, when I have time to do anything other than watch the games, I will do that maybe. So yes, that sounds fun. At any rate, no, a great gold medal for Canada. And as I said, it's I have a lot of time for the freestyle wrestlers. There's a good tradition of that in this country. That was the third time Canada won a gold medal on the wrestling side, and enjoyable way to do the game. We got a Canadian medal that I have to pay a lot of attention to at 15 minutes. So let's quickly get through these. Kevin, let's go to your silver medal.
My silver is Ryan Krauser of the shot put United States. I have a feeling you're going to be have to talk a lot about this record. A 22.52 shot put distance, a new Olympic record, a rookie on the international scene. He was in the NCAA level up until the Olympic trials for the United States, and he upsetted everybody, made some 22 meters shot, and was qualified, and he actually beat the world champion Ryan Kovac, who finished second in that competition. Ryan Krauser of the United States, very young in the shot put, and has a little bit of different technique than anybody else. He uses more a straightforward technique than the spin, and it was very prolific for him on the day. He beat the record from 1988. the Olympic record of 22.52. Ryan Krauser from the United States is my silver medal.
Speaking of in my lifetime, the world record in the shot put is 23:12 by Randy Barnes, who, yeah, like it was 1990, and that whole just to throw them all out, those records back then, that was essentially a world record we saw yesterday, and hopefully we won't have reason to suspect it.
And it's trackable. Those type of shot put don't come out of nowhere. And when you see his history as a young kid, you see yes, it was his best performance ever, but he was speaking towards his performance, and you can track back his performance from the NCAA side, and he was facing against great opposition. The NCAA, we forget about this, but NCAA has a very high level of athletes in the track and fields and athletics, and not just Americans, all across the world. So when you're in college, you're facing your potential adversaries at the international level in college. So you do have that great level of competition. And Ryan Krauser, when you mix his new technique, or the new way he does an old technique, mixed with his athleticism, he's a new kind of shot put guy, not the biggest, a little taller, a little leaner, but more dynamic, more powerful, more elastic, I would say, to carry that put far as you can, the way he throws it. So it's trackable, his result.
Yeah, and again, 23:12 is the world record right now. Here's what I would do if I were the world governing body of track and field. I would add like a half pound to the shot put and retire the old records, just like they did with javelin. That way we can ignore the fact that these records haven't been broken since 1990 and just start again, because that's really fairer than what we're seeing right now. Although kid's only 60 centimeters away, so that's, you
might get that because
one more turn of the shot. Yeah,
because you do become better in that type of event as well when you become older, 30, 35. Usually if you go back to Dylan Armstrong in Canada, that's when he was in his prime. That's going to be the same for Ryan Krauser. So you can expect him for Tokyo, and the game no one wants has a potential gold medal favorite.
All right, my silver medal was the women's 800 field, and for a lot of the reasons that we talked about in the windmill, because it's creating dialogue and all that sort of stuff. I also wanted to highlight Melissa Bishop, who I think is a phenomenal Canadian athlete that isn't getting her due right now. She's doing incredible things out there, and in any other Olympics and any other time, I think we'd be talking a lot more about Melissa Bishop, and hopefully maybe she can surprise and get up close to a podium finish tonight, because I do believe that this is an athlete that's worth tracking, worth watching, and has done the country proud. So I did want to get that out there, but a lot of the topics that I was going to touch upon with my silver medal, we already have, Kevin, so I'm going to move on and let you go to your gold.
My gold is, well, because I feel privileged. I think you feel the same. To have seen this man run, yeah, we had a great performance by Canada. We all know we're going to talk about this gentleman for the rest of our probably lives, because he's going to become the best Canadian sprinter ever. But before we talk about DeGrasse, which we're going to talk about on the 5 rings for the years to come, Usain Bolt, Duane, maybe the best sprinter ever. Yes, he's tall and has an advantage, but he was able to do the best with what he had, and that's to become the best ever. Triple double done. There's one left. It's the relay. Can he get it? We'll see. What a performance. Best ever. He ran until the line, and if the conditions would have been different last night, there was a headwind of a -2 miles per hour that actually hindered his time, because he ran that faster and he was expecting to have a time close to his world record. Just look when he crossed the line where he was looking straight at that clock, and that's something that's not characteristically of his nature to do so. So when he ran past that line, we all knew that he was going for a great record, but because of headwind, he didn't get that record. But think that because of the grass pushed him a little bit in the semifinal, and if you listen to his post-game comment, he mentioned, oh yeah, why did he push me? He didn't have to do so. It's a semifinal, but we'll see tomorrow. And he really pushed hard in that semifinal, and in the final just dominated everybody. Was 2-3 lengths before everybody else in the grass, and another 2 lengths than the rest of the field. But I am privileged to have seen Usain Bolt win in 3 straight Olympics.
Well, yeah, we're all privileged to have been alive to watch him run, was what I tweeted at the final thing. And I too want to not talk. This is going to sound weird. for a Canadian show, but I don't really want to talk about Andre DeGrasse right now. He obviously has had a brilliant Olympics and a brilliant breakthrough, but the topic of conversation should be Usain Bolt. He is the man that the rest of the world is talking about. He is the man that we should be talking about. He is clearly the greatest sprinter of all time. He is arguably the greatest Olympian of all time. I lean that way. I know others will say Phelps, but I lean towards Bolt. But the fact of the matter is we've seen them both in the same time frame, and that is something to behold. Would you argue that maybe it's because it's the TV era? No, I don't think so. Their performances, their records stand up historically, whether or not we're paying attention, whether or not Phelps was American, whether or not the NBC era was there or not. These are the greatest two Olympians, I think, 1, 2, in some order of whatever you want to place them. If you're a swim fan, maybe you're going to lean towards swimming. If you're a track fan, you're going to lean towards track. But
Duane, what do people? Did you get the feeling that everybody wanted to see Michael Phelps race, or did you get the vibe yesterday when it was about to come and everybody, even in like my place where I was, which is not a sports place at all. Usually it's never sports that's playing on TV. It was last night for those 20 minutes. You don't get that when it's for Michael Phelps. You know, maybe but it's never that hype. So I'll have to say Usain Bolt won and Michael Phelps too. And not to take anything of they done, just the sheer scope of the accomplishment on a scale. Bolt is number one ever.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we're going to be arguing from the same side here on this particular case, and I do think that not to discredit anything Phelps did, but I do think that what Bolt has done in his sport is a little harder to sustain than what it is. Although certainly Phelps has again, and we talked about Phelps last week, and one of the greatest ever there too. And I know that Bo, when we had him on, he thought that he would be number one from his perspective, and that's probably something that a lot of Americans share because obviously the American athlete is going to get a lot of attention down there. And again, not to discount that, but Bolt is just on another world, and I am very much looking forward to seeing how the next year progresses and whether he can go out and do a victory lap in London or not. We'll see.
To touch on the grass a little bit, Duane, the hunger that he showed in his comments after the race, he was defeated and he felt defeated and he wants to beat the man, and he only has one more shot to beat the man at that level, and that's the 2017 London World Championship. Will be Usain Bolt's swan song. He has promised this to Seb Coe, which is the organizer of that competition, former track and field. Well, he's not former. You're never a former legend. You're just a legend. So legend of track and field in Great Britain. So there's only one more occasion for DeGrasse to beat the man, because the type of person that he is, with the type of ambition that he does have, positive ambition on the track, result focused ambitions, he wants to be the best. He wants to beat the man. And if you become the best because Bolt retires undefeated, do you feel like you're the man, or you just feel you took over and you took his spot? That's the question. I have a feeling DeGrasse wants to take that spot, and he is going to have one more shot. That's in 2017 in London.
Fair enough. All right, 5 minutes to go in the show. We do have the Canadian women's bronze medal game, which for our soccer side of things is a massive thing that we need to follow. So we need to wrap the show up now. My gold medal is going to go away from the track, and obviously I knew I gave Bolt to Kevin because I knew that it would be up there, and he's the platinum medal of the day, really. But yeah, I did want to give some attention to Allison and Bruno, which were the beach volleyball men's pairs for Brazil, who won the gold medal, the final event on the beach last night, late 1:30 in the morning local time. Crazy rowdy crowd in the pouring rain over a game Italian opponent, but they were just dominant in that match. It was an exciting match. Beach volleyball is a sport. It's not quite soccer in the eyes of the Brazilians, but it is a sport that is very synonymous with Brazil on the most famous beach in the world, their famous beach. They won the beach sport, and the country celebrated, and I think they were well refreshed while they were celebrating. But it was like watching a World Cup final of football, only it was beach volleyball, and it was completely enthralling me. And I also,
it's on the most famous beach in the entire world.
Yeah, exactly. I also, just a quick nod that I when I grew up loving the Olympics as a kid, I never dreamed that I would be watching beach volleyball on my telephone while lying in bed, and that's how I watched it.
And in HD, like. In HD.
Yeah, beautiful photo. I'm on a little tiny screen on my phone.
You know what I tried? Just quickly, I tried the virtual reality CBC thing with my phone.
Yeah,
and it changed my life. I didn't realize what it could be. And if you have a revolving type of lazy boy chair like I have, and you clear space around it so you can circle 360, this is game changer. This will change your life. You can see whatever you want, and oh my lord, it's amazing.
Yeah, I've been meaning to download it to try it, but I've always been distracted. So maybe this weekend, maybe for the closing ceremony or something, I'll do it. So that'll be fun that way. All right, Kevin, we do have to watch this soccer game. We'll have a lot of coverage on this on Five Rings tomorrow, on Soccer Today on Monday. Until that time, Kevin, as always, I'm going to have you say goodbye.
Stay tuned to the Sports Podcast Network. Grade 2S Extra. Sorry, Grade 2 Upfront that's coming out in the next hour with Sonia Karate of Kondratenko, of her real name, of Kick TV with Baxter. And until next time, on your podium, folks. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.